Hello everyone. I'm glad to see you on my channel. The story I'm going to tell you today is pure. It is true that all the bad things that happen in life happen for a reason. It is said that we can appreciate the good things, the things when they happen to us. I hope you enjoy this story. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience.
Beautiful Denver, stately and red brick. The Shklovsky staircase descends from its foot to the Missouri riverfront, pedestrianized Broadway Street. Among the old buildings rambles a modestly dressed young woman, old jeans, unremarkable sweatshirt, not flashy sneakers, gathered in a ponytail, bright red hair, clearly long ago has not known professional styling, from under thick stockings on the surrounding world. Occasional glances of green eyes with golden dots on the pupils. Stunningly beautiful, but somehow joyless. She is irresistibly good, looking like some ancient Greek backhand, created to drink wine and make merry. A jeweler would say, like an emerald skillfully framed by the fiery luster of gold, but hiding its charms for a while. But she does not want to drink wine and praise Dionysus. She wants the peace of silence, the freedom. Behind her back, the gates of the women's colony on the Orchard Street lands in Nizhny Novgorod closed 2 hours ago. There's still 3 hours of time before the train home south. Why not see a city she had seen only a few times and from afar? Yes, heard its noise as she traveled from institution to institution. At the beginning of a long pedestrian boulevard with a mass of funny sculptures, the redhead stops by a souvenir store to buy the famous Gorodets gingerbread for souvenirs. Though who is going to take a present? She has no intention to meet her mother after her betrayal. And she has no one else in this world. Somehow unexpectedly, quickly under sad thoughts, a pretty street with artists, a crowd of inquisitive tourists, a collection of stores, almost ends near the transition to the Kremlin complex. A woman peeks into a butcher store with local specialties. Mother of God, I was leaving to get away from the world of total deficit, and here the counters are bursting with abundance. The stranger is talking to herself. Greedily buys an appetizing ring, glossy smoked sausage, a fresh loaf, unable to resist adding a jar of instant coffee, a packet of her favorite oatmeal cookies to her stockpile of provisions, adds a little to the tasty trophy, a flat bottle of cognac. She had something to celebrate tonight, though she was indifferent to booze. There would have to be something to enjoy on the train. More than 24 hours, she continued her mental monologue. Get used to the realities of free life, new conditions, the clean air of loneliness, when everything around you ceases to be common. A dormitory barrack with bunks, rows of showers in the bath, basins for washing laundry, a workshop for sewing men's underwear, a la family. The woman smiled, remembering that her name Lucy is translated as laundry basin, goes for a walk around the territory of the Kremlin, takes a long look at the exposition of military equipment at the entrance, stomps leisurely along the alleys for love with bright berries from ripe rowan berries. Golden autumn. It rules its colorful costume ball. The foliage of all shades of yellow, green, and Bordeaux is still pretty firmly on the trees and shrubs. But the Missouri is frowning its autumnal frown, rolling gluey gray waters, bringing boats up and down. There's even 2 luxury cruise ships moored there. You can't see the names from afar, but for some reason Lucy is firmly convinced that the ships are cruise ships. At the Zone, they recently showed them a movie in honor of the holiday of some townsperson and the arrival of the commission, Titanic. There was a rich crowd walking the decks. They ate their food in the restaurant, shining in the light of artificial lamps with snow-white dishes, demonstrated to each other expensive outfits, jewelry, aristocratic gloss, everything on display, everything in the highest order. Maybe that's why God drowned this uncaring bunch in the icy seawater. That's how the poor seem to love America, promising everyone the fulfillment of their most cherished dreams. Where does justice lie in this world? You'd be hard-pressed to find it. Lucy used to spend a lot of time in the Zone reading books. The library was noble. She chose novels of English and French classics, not badly studied the works of writers, dramas, thrillers, tragedies. I didn't complain. I had more than enough of my own misfortune. Plunge briefly into someone else's tales became easier. Longing behind the glitter of book tinsel hid. I was naive or dreamy. She saw herself in the future also the author of sentimental novels, love lyrics. How many women's fates passed her by in the Zone? How many stories for a lifetime cannot tell on paper, and the words will not pick up the right? But where literary craft is taught, she did not know. No, she wasn't an illiterate ignoramus. She had finished school without a C before she went to jail, but then everything went wrong. The woman was distracted from not cheerful thoughts by an ugly scene. A noisy flock of young people fell out of the bus. The group was either going on a tour of the city or had already returned from it. One healthy, handsome guy was dragged out of the bus, almost in his arms. At first, she even thought that he was ill, where there was a good-looking, obviously richly dressed major was drunk, and the comrades did not know what could be effectively done about it. Not finding a more productive solution, they laid the guy on a bench next to Lucy sitting on it. Don't even think of interfering, ordered the ex-convict to herself. Isn't that all you need, trouble? I hadn't gotten home yet. And my heart ached and ached for the stupid, inexperienced boy. About 20 meters away from this bench sat two elderly people who looked like independent tourists, exploring Denver meticulously, with feeling, with purpose. They were heatedly discussing their impressions of the architectural beauties in the nearby streets. The woman carefully handed her companion a bottle of water and a piece of candy bar, just broken off a bar in a rustling package. Probably husband and wife. It's obvious that they've understood each other half-heartedly for a long time. They wouldn't be chased away. Beware, Lucy thought, but her tongue was already working ahead of her. The boy's not well. She ran up to the resting couple. Could you call an ambulance? And yourself, why did not you dare? The old man smiled slyly. Maybe the youth and without us will cope, and then we have to deal with a false call. We are not from around here. I'm not from here either, Lucy explained. I have a train in an hour, and I was just about to catch a cab to go to the train station. Altogether, they turned to the bench, on which the guys had laid the poor man, who knew no measure in his outpourings. The victim was restless, waving his arms. He kept falling off the bed. The guy was already so bad that the guys moved him to the ground, putting down their jackets. They themselves were shivering, squirming in the far from timid autumn chill. You've got it, you restless young lady, said an elderly tourist, pressed the screen of the phone. With a clear voice, he began to explain to the dispatcher on the other end of the wire where he was and what had happened, and Lucy belatedly thought about the fact that she had not yet realized to get a connection. Yes, and the device of cellular communication knew were completely unknown to her. You'll have to learn everything on the outside again. She knocked out her attitude while she ran to catch a cab, but she was gestured down by a man helping with the ambulance. Don't leave me and my wife behind. If you witness what happened, I'll call you a cab to the station. It's come to this, Lucy laughed unkindly to herself. 3 hours out of the zone, and already managed to sign up as a witness. There's nothing to do. I made this mess and I'll have to clean it up. I've got a meticulous nature. I can never get past it. If something's wrong. The ambulance arrived surprisingly quickly, and thank God. By that time, the unlucky Alki had already lost consciousness from intoxication. Doctors had to carry out resuscitation right on the bench, and then to Lucy and her elderly helpers approached both the police and medical rescue workers. You called us quickly. Well done. We suspect the boy has an individual intolerance. First time he tasted vodka, he had a seizure, could have gotten quinsy edema. We got there in time. His life is in no danger now. Even a cab, called by a comrade in the Salvation Army, did not save Lucy from the fact that in the train, in her carriage, she sat almost on the run. The conductor was a pest. She studied the certificate of release like some ancient scientific treatise in an unknown language. She hummed unhappily, saying that there were not enough convicts in the car, but she nodded her head graciously for a place in the passenger car. Lucy rode alone on the two side shelves. At the bottom, like a queen, she drank 100 grams straight from the neck for a sweet sleep. She snacked happily on a smoked sausage sandwich. And then I brought myself some boiling water, borrowed a faceted glass cup holder from the conductor, generously poured into it divinely smelling coffee and meat granules. I bought Tristicas with sugar, tore open a packet of cookies. Divine, impossible, fabulous. Thought Lucy was falling through the clatter of the wagon wheels, even after a hefty dose of coffee, into a graceful slumber. Her fate had been steep until now. What would the coming day hold in store for her? That sweet word, freedom. Thought Lucy woke up in the morning in a train car. That seemed to be the name of an old detective movie made in the 70s by either the Baltics or Chicagoans with the Baltics. Some escaped prisoners, some chases and pursuits. It's strange, I remember the movie vaguely, but the winged phrase from it popped up at once, It's all she long-awaited freedom so influences me. The period of agonizing for me the decisions of the administration is alkanayotsia. They'll release me on parole, detain me, remind me of all my sins. A young woman rolled such a pleasant word freedom in her mouth. She enjoyed it, this imaginary triumph, expressed by leaving the territory of the colony. A holiday, a new experience, a revelation. Who's gonna be a panka behind barbed wire? It's funny. It's a good thing I'm going home to New York, not lurking, having every right to do so. My 8 years in the penitentiary is like a bad dream, like hell and hard labor. She saw this picture much later, and she was born earlier. Little Lucy was born in 1995. Parents lost their jobs, survived by casual earnings, quarreled among themselves almost to the fight, and then sweetly reconciled. Here at the conclusion of such another piece, she appeared in the womb in the project, not in time, oh how not in time. After realizing that knocked up, her mother was angry at the world, shouted at her husband Dold, who did not like to protect himself, blamed herself for lack of restraint in dangerous days. What was the use? Pregnancy was rarely easy and carefree. Only the belly after the 5th month began to round up. Otherwise, no toxicosis, no health problems. My father was offered a job on a rotational basis in the northern latitudes. Easygoing Joe packed a backpack. He was the only one in sight. Always irritated, blushing, fat wife, he had long pissed him off. And now he had an excuse. He settled down in the north like a native. He enjoyed the abundance of fluffy white snow, invigorating frost, wooden log cabins right in the middle of the harsh Tego with a rudimentary set of amenities. He had a strange feeling of a caveman who had been kept in captivity until now and then released into the open. In his small homeland of seaside New York, he had never seen such winter riches. He prayed for male physical work and logging, which paid well by the standards of the 90s. He quickly found himself a fighting, hardy girlfriend for lovemaking. He was a prominent man, even among the same sometimes handsome stout men, distinguished by his breed, article, and grace. A telegram with the text, "Do not wait for me, I will not return. Here now is my home and my happiness." Knocked his wife in 6 months, and then disappeared from the horizon of his wife, and already born by then Lucy. The divorce was formalized in absentia. He made it clear that the alimony is not worth counting on, as well as to complain to the authorities and search for him useless. It would be worse if his first family went to the wrong place. Another woman might have gone to bat for her rights and get her spouse back. Lucy's mother went to the other extreme, began to change suitors like gloves, all in an attempt to prove to herself and her ex-husband that she's not a slackard either. She's in demand with the male sex. The girl grew up as a tumbleweed, from staying in kindergarten from Monday to Friday in the school after-school program. Her mother was looking for her ex-husband's features and the girl's green eyes. Joe's hair was a light red head, but this one was painted like shining copper. Her figure was feminine beyond her years, as if she had not been born as a little scamp, but Aphrodite had come out of the foam of the sea. Lucy's mother compared herself and the growing little girl to the mirror. She didn't like what she saw. Therefore, in the rare hours when her daughter was at home and not in another children's institution, spanked her for no reason. It would have continued to continue and further, but the absent-minded mother fell in love. Yes, so that the light around without a hearty friend now did not see, there is no it near does not breathe. He does not sleep lazily on the sofa, at the window freezes in anticipation. At that time, Lucy was 14 years old. The girl had blossomed, so you could paint pictures of her. And her mother is more and more anxious to get her out of sight and out of mind, so that the new boyfriend won't be interested in the young one. It didn't work. When the beau saw Lucy for the first time, he froze in admiration, but he was not a fool to show his interest in an underage girl. A young beauty walks across the room with an apple or a book. He'd be blown away with desire. She's just a snotty little thing. It's not far from trouble. He chose a cunning and secret tactic to win the girl. Books with her began to discuss, which also read and continue to study in large quantities, in chemistry and physics pulled up. Lucy was more and more attracted to literature and history. I took her to the movies and ice cream cafes while my common-law wife was on shift. Lucy's mother had been working as a conductor on intercity trains for 3 years already. He did not give himself away with a look, gestures, or a touch. On the contrary, kept somewhat aloof, like a cunning fox in ambush, knowing that his patience will reward him. For Lucy's 15th birthday, he gave her a small bottle of real French perfume and a new dress. "We have to pamper our daughter," We're family." He explained his generous impulse to his life partner. At times it began to seem to him that the hunt for the attention of even more beautiful young lady became for him a game, the purpose of life. If Lucy knew what thoughts and desires caused by her appearance, warm smile in the head of her stepfather, she would have fled from home without looking back. But the girl was naively unconcerned about anything, was childishly in love with a classmate who sat with her at the same desk, reveled in the works of Alexander Dumas, Swade Dreiser. She was a little out of this world. Her peers ran to the school wasteland to smoke. They pass a bottle of wine around, and then they play the bottle game. She'd take out another classic masterpiece from her backpack and disappear into dreams and reveries about a prince. Her mother did not spoil her with fashionable things in her closet and did not let her near her cosmetics. Lucy dressed gray and dull. Only bright appearance did not allow her to become a laughingstock. Good-natured, easygoing character. It's the 21st century. All around only talk about cell phones, their gadgets dream of getting from their parents. Lucy had no idea about the existence of technology, which can be controlled by pressing fingers. She was donning a button version of Nokia with a minimal set of functions, believing that this miracle, forgotten to the rich passengers in her mother's car, was the last masterpiece of electronic technology. There are so many other interesting things around in her beloved sunny New York City. The blue early warming still in spring and the long defending sea of fall velvet dunes, the gentle sand hugging Charlotte, the village suburb of the children's resort where their little private house stood, cherry trees in the garden in early summer with large maroon fruits, yellow-orange apricots in July, red-green juicy apples in September. In all these southern luxuries, the girl in the summer beach season helped her mother to trade. For the vegetable garden, both of them had neither strength, nor desire, nor time. So a couple of beds of greens for their table, fruit-bearing trees, curtsies with a plow did not require. Perfectly helped with an extra cent in the family budget. Fruit merchants did not go to the market. They gave their crops to resellers and let them do what they wanted with them. Lucy clutched her eyes sweetly. She realized she was hungry like a wolf. No, like a wolf that hadn't been fed in a long time. The rest of the sausage and loaf were devoured in 5 minutes. Then she had coffee and cookies. A couple of them she gave to a quick boy who was always spinning in the aisle of the carriage. She thought, look how his mother is fiddling with him. She took out a drawing set and handed him a big white pear, and then she smoothed his hair on his curly head. Why was everything wrong with my childhood? What did I deserve such indifference of my own mother? The girl's stepfather, by the way, was absolutely indifferent to all girls and girls falling into his eyes. Only Lucy awakened in him instincts and desire to be a pioneer to teach her everything. At 16, he still hadn't touched her, having paid for a birthday trip to VGS with the class that her parents had been offered at school. Before her senior year, Lucy came back from the trip so enthusiastic. Palaces, temples, sculptures, bridges, bodies of water, park landscape masterpieces. A new and more tangible dream was born in her pretty head. She should connect her destiny with the literary field, to be close to such marvelous art as the whole of North Palmyra. After digging through online academic directories, she chose a literary institute in Chicago. In Vegas, alas, there was no specialized university in the chosen profession. In the study in the 11th grade, plunged Penblong. Stepfather in every possible way gave in to her in all endeavors, even convinced her mother. Let's send Lucy to the capital to study. My aunt lives there. She's a lonely woman. She'll take her in for the first time, then we'll see. We can't afford the commercial department, but the budget let her dare, if she gets the right number of points. The girl's mother didn't object. She was concerned about the presence in the house suddenly very mature daughter. It was already obvious that the fruit of their love affair with the cheating Joe had turned out to be fire. All right, slender figure, long slender legs, a thick wave of auburn red hair down to her waist. If you let it loose, the blush all over her cheeks, the emerald green of her lustrous and lively eyes. A lady of perfection. There's no other way to call such a work of Mother Nature. Behind the boys with silly giggles does not run. Next to almost indifferently sits with textbooks from morning to night, missing all the youth parties in the village. Oh, how many young people with a claim to cavaliers. Circles around their little house sliced silent Lucy heart. Nobody liked from the word at all. A gift, not a child. No worries for her mother, White Crow, and a flock of peers not spoiled, almost Turgenovskaya, a young lady, romantic, sentimental, kind, soulful, dreaming of pure, real, necessarily mutual love. So far, a suitable object in the immediate environment is not outlined. She will, as she sometimes joked, to study, study, and study. Mother did not realize that she had a very well-read, enlightened child. There was no time to dig into it and figure it out. How her daughter will live in Chicago, the mother did not think at all. I wish I could get this rival out of her husband's sight as soon as possible. Life will be easier. Life will be more fun. Stepfather still enthusiastically delved into all the literary experiments. Stepdaughter, devouring her eyes, and more frankly, a couple of times unintentionally in an argument, put his hand on her knee. When he saw the astonishment in her gaze, he immediately retreated cowardly. Lucy, though she was nothing like her classmates, she didn't live on the moon. Something in her second daddy's gaze now began to seem viciously criminal, but she tried to dismiss such thoughts. There was not much time left before the final test of those notorious U.S., turning the exams upside down. How many points will I be able to score? Lucy was thinking about one thing. She didn't care about her stepfather's stares. Maybe it was all just my imagination. The circumstances of admission to the capital's university were most favorable. The number of points received after passing the U.S. was solid, and stepfather's aunt turned out to be the widow of a former official from the top. With the right connections, intelligent old lady met Lucy as a native person. Educated, intelligent, wise woman told the girl how to behave in the admissions committee. What other documents to add to create the image of a suitable applicant for this institute. In parallel with the admission, Lucy avidly familiarized herself with Chicago, the Field Museum with all its beauties and grounds, a trip to the Millennium Park, walking on the Crown Fountain, 2 trips with her aunt to the famous Metropolitan Theaters. There wasn't enough time for more, alas. I saw my name on the list of the lucky students admitted to the first course. She chose the specialty of literary worker, translator of fiction. She really wanted to learn several foreign languages as well. She didn't go home, but flew on the wings of victory. New York met her with the summer heat of summer vacationers idly walking around the village, the smells of ripe watermelons and melons, a quick bite to eat. Mother was on a trip, and stepfather at work rushed to the sea. Long walked on the soft sand, shallow water. Then she threw herself into the aquamarine water with puppyish delight. She wanted to shout to the sky and the seagulls flying above her. I got an hurrah! I'm going to Chicago soon to study. I begin a new and necessarily successful and happy life. I came home all salty. My feet in the sand didn't even begin to dry. I wanted so badly to share the news with people close to me. With a joyful squeal, I rushed under the shower, washing off the traces of the sea presence and invasive omnipresent sand. I was so busy with my sensations that I didn't hear that the bathroom door opened silently, and my stepfather came in. Hearing his words and realizing his intentions, Lucy began to resist. Let me go. Are you crazy? What's the matter with you? Get out of here right now. The man didn't listen to her. After a few seconds, Lucy quieted down. Her stepfather took her reaction as a sign of agreement. The girl, meanwhile, frantically searched for a way out of this nasty situation. Also, Mom is on a voyage. What would happen now? Lucy all twitched with revulsion. The stepfather she trusted so much had just betrayed her in the nastiest way imaginable. The girl's eyes searched the room around her, and then she saw the shaving machine her stepfather used lying on the edge of the sink. A haze in her eyes, a state of effect, hopelessness. Lucy grabbed the razor and started stabbing him randomly with it. The cuts on her stepfather's face. The wild panther, the lynx, the ravenous cougar awoke in her. Taking advantage of her stepfather's confusion, jumped out of the old cast iron bathtub. Running into the room, the man, distraught with pain and frustration, rushed after her. The girl thrashed around the living room until she saw a massive crystal vase. She hadn't meant for him to die. It had all come out by accident. Throwing the glass stampede at her pursuer, she didn't calculate the force of the blow. There was so much hate in her right now, like some corny crime movie, flashing through her mind in a hot delirium. Her stepfather swung his arms in some ridiculous way, slipping in the puddle left by a wet Lucy. For a couple more seconds, as if in slow motion, he ran forward, and then a vase thrown by the girl appeared in his path. The blow landed on his forehead and temple. Lucy, sobbing, jumped up to the father lying on the floor. Again, she grabbed the fallen vase and delivered several more blows to the man's head. Later, the investigator said she had not committed an act of self-defense. She didn't have the strength to defend herself or prove anything for a long time. Then, after what happened, Lucy sat on the floor next to the body and howled. Then she went to the city phone, dialed the number of the police, and said deeply, "Come here, stepfather's dead." At the trial, her mother testified against her. "She was always hovering in front of my husband. He couldn't have made a move on her by himself. She just provoked him with her defiant behavior. There's only one man in this world who loved me properly, and that one was killed by my dear little daughter. I don't want to know you anymore. Dan you." It didn't take long to solve Lucy's case. Her victim's head was a mess, not a scratch on her own. No help from the neighbors' stories about her being a well-behaved girl. Unflattering character references from school. The young criminal was given 10 years in a general security colony. She did not appeal to the higher courts. While the trial was going on, the documents were awaiting finalization. She turned 18. Now she couldn't even be a juvenile. The place of incarceration was Denver Women's Correctional Facility 2. After 8 years of exemplary work and behavior, Lucy was allowed to be released on parole. Now Lucy went to her hometown, not knowing what awaits there. Her mother, during her time in prison, never once came with her for a visit, did not transfer a single parcel to the zone. Only after her arrest, she brought her things to the detention center and disappeared. All these gloomy, hard years had passed. It was getting dusk outside the train window. Lucy again desperately wanted to eat. Here, and a long stay in Miami came up. On the platform in a clean grocery kiosk, the girl bought 2 appetizing chebureks and 2 tender, still warm cocker puree with cheese. Coffee would do as a drink. She now had to save her earnings. Rent an apartment, settle down at the resort, get her passport again, try to find a job. On the sandy shore of New York, in the heart of the beach areas of Charla Village, sat a young man. He thought about the fact that soon the famous dunes would be completely lost from the barbaric raids of hoteliers, would disappear from the face of the earth. This was his way of distracting himself from his misgivings. He did not admit to himself that his heart was uneasy. For hours now, since last night, his twin brother hadn't returned his calls. Since childhood, he and Harvey had been evenly matched. Impressive height, well over 180 centimeters. The appearance of a tough warrior with a well-developed torso and musculature. Brown eyes with a twinkle, thick, luxuriant hair that any young lady would envy. Why did God give us different views on the world around us as a mockery? Once again, Tony asked himself. He himself is the soul of the company, the leader, the gray cardinal of the fate of peers. Waving the finger, any beauty will go with him in the palace, and in a hut under the bright southern stars. We'll be honored to accompany him at parties. Parties as a queen with an invisible crown of the chosen one, will sit in his black SUV and proudly gawk at the sides. Harvey is his brother, a half-brother, and from the same egg hatched as their mother likes to tease their mother, a bookworm, a fan of the computer, all these programs of technical coding inconceivable on the female sex, zero attention. Once fell in love in school in the neighbor's house, followed her like an idiot, tied with a rope to the leg of the diva, and then her parents moved to Chicago. Priless Nitsa disappeared forever, cutting off all past ties with the provincial Black Sea resort. Harvey, meanwhile, was still gone, never showed up at home. Offline. The man shook the sand off his jeans, went to the car parked in one of Charlotte's driveways to the sea. I'm going to stop by Harvey's apartment again and head to New York. There's a club thing tonight. I should at least take a shower and change. Taking the car off the alarm, once again looked around the neighborhood, saying to myself, it's good as it is now, it's quiet. High beach season is over. The natives are coming to their guest houses and hotels clean their feathers. Soon it will begin again, repair, painting, renewal. Before you know it, the new summer season is inexorably approaching. Tommy had quite a strong construction business, several crews, qualitatively engaged in the renovation of resort complexes. Activity in these fertile lands for vacationing citizens is profitable, always in demand. Therefore, Tony, unlike Harvey, was quite financially secure. Not that brother then thick after the sale of another interesting program invented by him, then empty, as the money is thrown away on important hardware and other technical things. You've got a hole in your pocket, Harvey, rumbled the younger brother. I was born 10 minutes too late. Seems a lifetime older than you with your pragmatism. Calls to Harvey's apartment door yielded nothing. Tony went to the extreme, opened the door with his spare keys, which he used on rare, exceptional occasions. His brother did not like strangers, even brotherly visits to his territory. An inspection of the room yielded nothing. The usual light clutter on the desk around the computer. a cup with the long-cooled remnants of strong coffee, tangerine skins, a bite of liver. In the washing machine in the kitchen, clean laundry that had already had time to dry, a pan with half-eaten pieces of fried sausage, poured eggs, breadcrumbs, sliced rings and fresh cucumber in a plate on the table gave the impression that his tidy brother, who usually kept the kitchen in perfect condition, somewhere in a hurry. The question remained, where exactly? Tony and Harvey had recently turned 30. Decision-making age, joked their chuckling mother. You brothers, rabbits already settled down, get married, have children. It's time to have children, and you all one on the fun girls are not amiss. The other to the monitor will stick to the monitor will not unblue, will not wait for us and my father grandchildren. We could have 2 grandchildren at once. My grandfather and I would walk along seaside alleys with 4 strollers at once. In our family, every generation, we have twins. It's a good thing. Once you had a baby, you're free. The family was from the natives of New York, their grandfathers, on these lands guests of resorts men looked after. It used to be like that. The sea was clean, but there was only seaweed on the shore. On the shore, the sand of yellow sand mixed to the touch is invisible. How many generations grew up here building intricate fortresses and castles out of sand by the sea? Around the city, the fields are endless with a variety of herbs of vine possessions. Rare low scatterings of silent peaks, the very beginning of the great mountains. The climate for health is the healthiest. Aromas of steppe blossoms with sea breeze mix, lungs up to bronchia from impurities release, a painful resort. It's not a hua. This is status. To be treated here in crowds already in the beginning of the 20th century, smart aristocrats from among the British subjects started to come here. They took their children here in the second half of the 19th century. Here and friendly family from generation to generation in every possible way contributed to the health of the population. Grandfathers, great-grandfathers before the Great Patriotic War, and after it fed visiting resort guests with fresh fruit, melons, watermelons, grapes. Backyard garden, vineyard they had almost 20 hectares. Post-war generations of son raised a wonderful, soulful, in children's doctors the guy went. He studied in the big city at the university, returned to his small homeland. All his professional life, he works in children's sanatoriums and takes care of orphans. The profile in their hospital was such, destitute and unaccompanied by their parents and fate abandoned to medical procedures to take. An experienced pediatrician is already 65 years old. So to a well-deserved vacation will not be chased away. Every morning again hurries to work, although that his first pregontorium has long been closed, miraculously preserved in the institution after already reconstructions at the Children's Resort of Health Resorts correctly works. His wife Casey, the mother of Harvey and Tony, among the hustling nurses looked out, cheerful and carefree. In spite of all the troubles, she was pretty and very kind. She stayed that way. At first, she couldn't get pregnant for a long time. Not only did they marry when they were both over 30, but their brothers were in no hurry to be born. But Casey, at 35, immediately as 2 from the chest identical from the face were drawn. They were rare naughty boys, Tony the younger, Harvey the older. They looked so much alike that except for Casey and her husband, they were confused by the whole neighborhood. So that in kindergarten, the teacher did not faint from these hooligans, made to copy. Casey was forced to dress them differently. So the boys here and adapted. They started swapping things, one size fits all, making the teacher's heart even more confused. People say that there is a special, almost mystical connection between the 2 twins. In Harvey and Tony, this property was tenfold increased. One finger hurts, the other cries from pain and fear. The first one's milk tooth fell out, timed it for an hour, and the second one will have a hole in his mouth to brag about. And fought for the truth, and cried and fell asleep under the warring songs of the mother, and loved kindergarten tiftelki with tomato gravy they equally. But the hobbies from childhood were different. One can marvel at this metamorphosis. Harvey raved about technology, read a lot of books as soon as he learned letters for the first time, but at the same time could not tolerate such a subject as math and worship literature. Tony knew all rock, pop, hard, country, and other bands by heart. He could guess tracks by the first notes. He danced like Maris Lipa, only without the ballet steps. From the age of 14, he raced secretly in his father's car, thanks to his tall height. Classmates fell in love with himself by the packs, broke little girls' hearts in a casual way, without straining. Harvey was not interested in any other technology except for the electronic one in the computer. Stared at the fair sex and saw nothing. His heart was silent. His soul wasn't panting. I made a joke once, but the lady left. I didn't conduct such experiments anymore. Sometimes he only relieved natural male tension in the company of another girl without complexes, from the numerous entourage of his brother. In one thing, the brothers were united irrevocably in their love for sports. Both had passed the candidate minimum for a master in swimming. Both went to the boxing section, but Harvey still later abandoned. At school, the twins mocked the teachers as they wanted. If there was no control work, frontal surveys were pankemi. Came to class in different guises. Both had short haircuts, brown eyes, but Harvey came to school in a strict classic suit with a turtleneck or shirt. The outfit was complemented by elegant men's shoes, a la a real gentleman, a hobo Tony shabby in jeans. Hoodies, wearing hoodies a couple sizes larger, bright acidic and sneakers. The teachers, knowing their commitment to different styles, calmly accepted the annual test from one, replacing the other, having changed clothes in the school restroom. Tony was in charge of math, literature, Harvey, and so on. In the final grade, Harvey had to pull up math with a tutor. You can't mess with the SATs. You can't tease the committee by changing masks. Tony tutored himself in literature. He did it himself. They took to their studies stoically, so they got their high school diploma. Their parents were getting old. It was uncomfortable for two such big foreheads to sit on their necks forever. They agreed on this opinion without any debate. No one would have believed it before. But Harvey himself, without pulling up by the ears, went to Miami State University to the Faculty of Mathematics, Mechanics, and Computer Science. He lived, breathed, raved about computers. To his brother was not bored in the Southern capital, Tony applied to Miami State University of Construction. In the student years of the twins were like everyone else. Live student cheerfully from session to session, and sessions only twice a year. Diplomas received, almost without straining. On vacation, they hurried to their native New York. They did not get out of the gentle sea, sunbathed until blackness between the dunes on the hot sand, spreading blankets. We ate sunny fruits, savored fried mullet of fresh catch, cooked ropana in a large cauldron over a fire. Tony usually brought another heartfelt friend to visit his parents. Sometimes the companion took with her, in turn, another young lady for Harvey to find. Empty troubles, brother never fell for it, which amused his parents. Tony then had to entertain two divas. The girlfriend of his girlfriend everywhere annoyingly dragged after him and the objects of his summer passion, not giving the young to be alone. Everything ended the same way. Tony had run out of patience. He'd buy the girls tickets home. He'd find himself a hottie in New York. The years of his almost carefree college years flew by like a blink of an eye. After graduation, the hopeful specialist in innovative it and Harvey was offered to stay in the department, but he fled home with Tony. The two couldn't live apart. Quiet, peace-loving, New York grew and developed by leaps and bounds, as mushrooms after the rain grew from under the ground modern fashionable hotels, from the number of cooler with stars on their epaulettes. Former home estates were transformed into guest houses, middle-class bed and breakfast establishments appeared. Anybody who could get the money was building them. Tony, like a fish in water, plunged into the maelstrom. A year later, he bought himself first an apartment and then a dark Jeep. Not lazy, and Harvey days and nights sat at the screen of a large monitor and corresponded with the sane webmasters about their archival things. Inventing, developing, selling, implementing. Started the whole process all over again. I earned a one-room apartment by myself. I knew how to drive a car, but he rarely used it. He passed the theory exams for his license with flying colors. Tony did the driving for him. Well, just in case, his brother is always in the clouds, will hesitate near the sign, will make a wrong turn, no matter what. So I took Tony's car. If it was for something, he never bought his own. Ungrateful son of a bitch. I'd say it like a spell in Tony's brother's apartment. If you show up, I'll kill you. The junk in the door, the rattle of the key in the lock, only the clock ticking in the room. By noon, the sun had already taken its place at the very zenith. Not a word from Harry. At the New York train station, the train arrived exactly on schedule. Lucy stepped out onto the small platform, greedily breathed in the sweet grassy air, looked around. On the small platform at the station, there were rows of cars with checkers, local cab drivers. Their service is chin-chinnerum. To come the spoonfuls of non-locals and take them to New York by the third road, through the village to moth the blessed kilometers and cents. Don't rip off your own people and don't offend them, and bring them home to your native land. Where are you going, my dear? The word of a willing young man rushed to her. "I'll deliver you in the best way, redhead." And at once he faltered when he saw the look of Lucy's green eyes. After the forced stay at the guest of the cousin, the girl looked differently. She was shivering and shivered to the bones from her cold. "I see you're from our land." The cab driver corrected himself. "If money is a problem under the Sagra, I'll take you for cheap. We're all in the same resort world here. We've got to help the land." Lucy gave the man the address of the house where she lived with her mother and stepfather. She decided to see what was going on there first. What she saw shocked her. A brand new hotel stood in the place of their home. There was no sign of the neighbor's property either. "Our Charlotte is growing, building on building and building on building," the cab driver boasted. "My wife and I moved to the village to New York. Is only 10 kilometers. We successfully sold our land here at the resort. Now we have a real house there with a large plot of land for a garden. You know the locals don't go to the sea very often. When you want to take a dip, you have a car, and the SCOMU will help you knock down." "And where can you rent an apartment in the city?" Lucy asked. "I'll take you there. Now we'll find you a shelter." On the unspoken real estate market, where they soon found themselves with a cab driver. The girl, surprisingly without delays, found a vacant apartment in the neighborhood High Bank. She gave the intermediary grandmother an advance payment for 3 months in advance, took the keys, and thanked the man for his help. "Let me take you to the point. The places there are great. The sea is like in the palm of your hand from the windows. New buildings, well maintained around with playgrounds. There are even open-air swimming pools in the yards. Near a small wasteland in a picturesque neighborhood." Lucy and the cab driver were about to part. He even offered to write down his cell phone number. "You'll need me. I'm always around." And then it dawned on her that she didn't have a cell phone yet. It's not a good idea to be out of touch in the modern world. A hospitable countryman helped her, and with this misfortune, in half an hour she had a brand new phone in her hands. It remained only to master the unknown for her technique and to enter numbers from the paper brought by Lucy from the colony. Friendship, close trusting convict Lucy did not leave with anyone in the colony. Her dorm mates, blissfully out of this world, considered her to have a morbid love for book novels, but the fascination of the family still played an important role for her in establishing normal contacts with her neighbor. That day, a new girl joined their squad. 5 was brought under the 124th article of the Criminal Code, which penalizes inappropriate medical care that resulted in death. The young woman worked as a surgeon after medical school. She was characterized by a bold, somewhat arrogant character, which in her profession was more of a hindrance than a favorable factor. She was on duty in the emergency room of surgery, where emergency patients from all over the city are brought by ambulance, and examined a girl with typical signs of acute appendicitis. The patient was brought straight from the airport. She was in a hurry to get her to the operating table to prevent peritonitis. Lucy didn't know much about all that stuff. Maybe she didn't get it from the story when the doctors discovered the breach on the patient. Everyone just gasped. Pretty little creature. Turned out to be a transporter. She was carrying around some powder packets inside her, one of which burst and burned everything inside, causing a hell of a lot of cramps. The lab later found out the notorious potion was an experimental novelty. It was highly toxic. The young peddler had no chance of survival, but such a resume was not to her liking. Her father was a powerful businessman from the capital. He personally traveled to the province to look into it. Paid to make the cause of death look different on the paperwork. He tried to get rid of the witnesses in white coats, and he blamed Annabelle's surgeon. That's how she ended up in the bed next to Lucy. Sobbing, hysterical. Couldn't believe this was happening to her. She doesn't remember the trial very well. Arrested in the courtroom. Staged from DC, she and Lucy both ended up from the coast. The book lover treated her with stories of how Annabelle would get out, meet her love, become happy, return to the profession. The latter was controversial, but Lucy presented everything so beautifully, so mesmerizingly that other female inmates began to gather around their romantic circle. They made up a story about me. They asked the new author, "You're blessed. What if God hears your mantras and prayers? And prosperity for us?" Evenings out had become a system. When one of the convicts had a bad time at home and they found out about it, they immediately went to Lucy with a request to calm my happiness. They generously shared the parcels with the inmates. Lucy, except intrigues, had nothing to give them. She only enveloped everyone who wished it, with a tale of the future, a life of being at large. All hoped, all believed. All waited for it to be as the redhead had told them it would be. Tomorrow Lucy will go to register with the authorities. At the same time, she will find out how it happened that she was registered in the place where she used to be registered. Now the hotel is welcoming guests. It seems there are lines in the law that she has the right to return from the zone to the place where she once lived. The massive new building, where it was not possible to rent a one-room apartment with furnishings, was quite high, dense thickets. It seems that the builders did not begin to uproot these thickets, did not raise their hand to destroy the colorful flowers and juicy emerald leaves. Now, however, by the fall, all this beauty has somewhat faded, but the remnants of luxurious flora still look charming. It was about 100 meters to the entrance. When the girl heard sobs in the bushes, the idea of herself further to seek adventure warned her inner voice. Her feet were already carrying herself to the incomprehensible sounds. What she saw, pushing apart the frescoes of a 10-meter plant, shocked her. On the ground lay a young man agonizing on his stomach, a knife sticking out of his back, around which there was a bloody stain on his light-colored jacket. At first, it was unclear whether the man was conscious or unconscious. Just don't touch the handle. You just got parole. This incident will be pinned on you. Anna's mind was racing. Go to your new apartment, drop your stuff, think about the situation and come back. If you decide to do that, don't call the police. Then you're dead. I gave myself mental instructions and followed them like a robot. I left my backpack of prison gear in the hallway, memorized a list of phone numbers, found Annabelle's number to try my luck. Maybe her girlfriend, who'd gotten out of the zone 6 months ago, would answer and give her a clue. In a metallic voice, the phone gave out the caller was temporarily off the network, but you could leave a message. Annabelle, it's blessed. Lucy mentally smiled. Gotta start weaning herself off the habits of the zone. Calling names by nicknames. I'm out on parole and back in New York today. Call me when you can. She grabbed her cell phone and ran back to the man in the bushes. He was lying in the same position. Eyes open, but it looked like he was in some bad shape. How come no one had discovered him here yet? Lucy asked herself questions that had no answers. This place needs a doctor. What good am I? I don't even know if I can get the knife out of his body. As if in answer to her doubts, the man looked up at her with brown eyes with thick and dark lashes. Seeing the red-headed wonder above him, he was dumbfounded. But then, gathering all his last strength, whispered into his pocket for the cell phone. Find Tony's contact. Make the call. He passed out again. The girl began fumbling through all his pockets. How has the world changed? She pondered. The courtyards of any high-rise in New York used to be noisy, crowded fun. I've been here for 10 minutes. In that time, no one has passed by. The playground with slides is empty, almost silently a car parked at the far entrance. Once again, there's no one around. Though maybe that's for the best. After a painstaking search, the device was found in the back pocket of her jeans. Lucy barely got it out of there, trying not to cause the man any more pain. The unknown Tony's cell phone was found at once. The answer came instantly. Harvey, where did you disappear to? You've never disappeared from the radar screen for so long before. It wasn't Harvey, Lucy replied deeply. For some reason, she was pricked by the stranger's anxious tone. I'm so worried about my relative. Who are you and what do you have to do with the man I found in the bushes near my house? She asked. What bushes? Interrupted her interlocutor. Did my brother get drunk or something? And now you're seducing him with your charms. I've met some dumb ones, but you will give them a head start, said the girl sharply. Do you even know how to listen to other people? I found your brother in the bushes with a live wound in his back. I've seen him for the first time in my life, but I'm not used to leaving those who are in trouble, she said, without missing, and then Tony said out loud, Dictate the address, and I'll be right there. I don't know the exact address. I just got out of the zone yesterday. I'm here today, Lucy said angrily. I rented an apartment in my native New York, in a neighborhood, I think. It's called the High Shore. It's getting worse by the hour. I hope you didn't sew him up there in a fit of passion. Her companion smiled. Lucy did not take his jest and replied, You guessed it, I was just on the 100th article of the Criminal Code. But it wasn't me who nailed your family. Tony immediately slowed down and said, What happened to Harvey? That he was with a young lady's jailbird. It's time to go, to find out, to put everything in order. Asking the stranger to go, read the exact address and house number, he jumped into his Jeep and rushed to the scene of the tragedy. Tony had expected anything, but he had never expected Lucy to come out of the bushes to meet him. Even in her modest, discreet attire, she looked like a lovely specimen of feminine beauty. She did not look like a criminal in the least. The man was confused, which was completely out of character for him. With flashing green eyes, Lucy led him to her brother, and then her cell phone came to life in her pocket. It was Annabelle. "Lucy, honey, you're out," she shouted into the phone. "Oh, I'm so glad, my blessed friend. How much did you do for me in prison? If it wasn't for your support, I would have broken down, died, surrendered to the will of fate." Tony listened with interest to the disorderly, excited monologue. With this convict, everything is not so simple as it goes. But Harvey must be helped now. At this time, in a nutshell, Lucy, not in the least lurking, outlined the situation to Annabelle. She responded without question. "You don't have to shine. You're just over 80 kilometers away. I'm in a car. I'll be there in 2 hours. Move the guy to a safe place so as not to touch the knife in his back. When I get there, I'll do it myself." Lucy turned to Tony and made her point. "Okay, so my friend's a molder. She's a surgeon by profession, according to you, but she's been suspended from practicing medicine. I don't think she's lost her skills. Why don't you go pick up your brother carefully and carry him to my apartment? I'm on the first floor. We'll manage." The girls stepped to the exit of the bushes to see if their way is free from unnecessary witnesses. "Check the cameras," Tony whispered in her back. "Residential neighborhoods like this are packed with them nowadays. I don't know the circumstances of Harvey's accident, but I don't think you mean him any harm. Harvey was transported perfectly. He wasn't even conscious. At Lucy's apartment, they put him on the couch. Still on his stomach, they pre-filled the surface beneath him with clay taken from the kitchen table. I haven't been here more than 10 minutes. I haven't gotten the hang of it yet," the girl explained her unfamiliarity with the area. "I'm going to plug in the refrigerator. I'll see if there's a kettle and some utensils in the kitchen. I might need some boiling water. You go to the drugstore. Get some dressings. Broad-spectrum antibiotics, iodine, saline, hydrogen peroxide, painkillers, that's on discount. I don't know what else you might need." After a moment's thought, she added in her own way. "Also go to the supermarket. You'll need a food supply and drinking water. Give me your phone number and I'll put it on the list. I don't want to go through your brother's phone anymore. I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not a caregiver for you or your brother." Tony was eager to run errands. Lucy, powerless, sank into the chair and began to stare at the man lying on the couch. Both brothers were handsome. One could sense at once that they were both endowed with charm, even though one of them was now lying in her rented apartment like a motionless cube of flour with an involuntarily throbbing body. Lucy had carried them to the colonies. When the cars were sent to unload the bakeries, they had their own on the grounds, but they never became real bakers. The flour wouldn't listen. It stuck to her hands and tried to take on an ugly shape as she molded powerful products. God, when would she finally stop living her life in the zone? Every moment of time paralleled her dreams. How would she know that? She came across a couple of outwardly masculine strangers, athletic builds. The eyes of the second one were like two brown lightning bolts. In the morning, Lucy had not imagined that a man could attract her, and even more so to awaken the female essence inside, to make her feel something hitherto unknown. Who to tell about the fact that she had never had physical intimacy with a member of the opposite sex? No one would believe it. She didn't have time. It didn't work out. After the incident with her stepfather, for a long time with a shudder, she was disgusted just by the thought of this side of the relationship between the two opposite sexes. After a couple of years of imprisonment began to throw her signs of attention, one of the convoyers. Mostly they were female guards, and here they sent a young soldier to help her on duty, and she was 20 at that time. Yes, and he is still young and clearly inexperienced. One day, on his watch, there was an engagement party in the colony. He went into the shower room to see her. The story with the stepfather didn't repeat itself. The kid only got to the door when she couldn't keep up with the others. He hesitated, and the sight of him made her so angry. There was something unprecedented in her eyes. Fearful, dangerous, wild. The guard, without saying a word, retreated, and then he turned his male attention to a young girl with no special complexes. The girl said that they even got along for a long time. At night, quiet mouse and outside, and on his watch the girl from the cell disappeared until morning. Then, when the time was up, he'd meet her from the zone. And how did it end? No one was interested afterwards. Here would be with their lovers on the outside, unattended left men each correctly disposed of. The phone rang on the table. It was Annabelle. A little confused about New York, out of habit, figuring out the address, Lucy told Harvey on the couch. He was still unconscious, punctuating his moaning and panting. Finally, the doorbell rang at the apartment, Annabelle and Tony piling in almost simultaneously. After sending him to the kitchen to sort out food and medicine, both women returned to the wounded man. "You'll take over," the doctor ordered in a moment. "Help me turn him a little. That's good now, and turn on all the lights in the room." Watching the quick, dexterous movements of the former surgeon was a real pleasure. For former doctors who had taken the Hippocratic Oath, Annabelle removed the knife, reporting that the penetration was not deep at all. No vital organs were hit, but there is blood loss, which is not good. After all the manipulations, she protected the patient, who immediately started mumbling something. "Well done. You bought everything correctly," she praised Lucy and Tony. "Now I will inject your victim with antibiotics and painkillers. He should come to his senses soon." To the doctor, "Why didn't you, my precious ones? The wound could have been much more serious. First, I'm gonna get to the bottom of this case. My brother and crime are on different paths. They're very far apart. I'm the one who gets hit on sometimes for business. He's kind of a quiet drunk, doesn't even go out with the ladies. He's always at his computer. Our parents are old medics, so they decided not to bother them." "Thanks a lot, Annabelle. I'll take care of it. Now my brother's awake, I'll take him home with me." "Don't even think about it." Annabelle was immediately outraged. "It'll take 2 or 3 days to transport him. We don't know how the wound will behave." "So what am I supposed to do now? Ask you for a permanent position?" Tony smiled, as imperturbable as ever. "I don't even know your name yet." "Lucy," without extra curtsies, answered the girl. "And you and your brother Tony and Harvey?" "That's what I've been drawing." "Found the document," Annabelle said. "I trust her, like myself. Too much has happened to us today." Half an hour later, the whole company, except Harvey, was having coffee over Lucy's stock in the kitchen. Tony hadn't thought to buy anything for hot drinks. The sausage and cheese Tony had brought were in use. The sandwiches with them all tasted divinely delicious. "Oh, I've got some gingerbread," Lucy remembered, and about 200 grams of cognac left in the bottle. The guys added cognac to their coffee and discussed the day's adventures with gingerbread, which turned out to be a real pastry masterpiece. At night, everyone decided to stay in the apartment. So, while the stores were open, Tony went to buy bed linen, towels, shampoos, toothpaste, and soaps. He couldn't resist. He went to the specialty store and bought elite coffee, turkey, sugar, chocolates, cookies. We should treat the girls to a little something sweet, considering where they both spent more than 1 year. Oh, the fates of women. How different they can be. Lucy had briefly told him who'd been nailed and why, and for some reason, he believed her unconditionally, unquestioningly. Annabelle had split too. How she was deprived of her favorite profession. Now she's a checkout girl at the supermarket. At least she got a job there. When Tony came back, he was dozing on the chair by the bedside. Lucy was in the kitchen trying to boil broth from chicken thighs. Tony was going to go to the kitchen too, so as not to make noise in the room. But then Harvey opened his eyes, looked around the surprisingly unfamiliar room, felt the bandage on his chest with his hand. "Where am I?" "Don't worry, I'm right here," Tony reassured him. "What the hell did you get yourself into? You never pulled a stunt like that on me before." "To clean up the aftermath of you and Nancy running away from a nightclub 3 days ago." "Why did you pick up Nancy?" "I took her back to my place. There were no other chicks around." That night the day before, Harvey was at the Monitor as usual. The day before, he'd spent a long time with his brother stopping by. Tony had just finalized another promising deal and had come to Harvey's house to celebrate his success in his business endeavor. He brought with him a whole basket of delicacies, a couple of cases of excellent beer. Harvey's bachelor pad was just out of clear supplies. I couldn't get a delivery. And then Mother Teresa showed up, as always with a good grunt and gifts. "Sort out the food, my electronic whoa. When are you going to get a girlfriend to cook borscht and baked pies? As if you need your passion for borscht." Harvey grumbled, already munching without any heat treatment on smoked wieners and grunting with dramatic pleasure. "You ring some person yourself. It's not necessary to observe the laws of brotherly seniority." Half an hour later, potatoes were already frying in the frying pan. On the kitchen table, there was a platter of fish and seafood, and Tony was masterfully chopping a salad of fresh cucumbers and tomatoes. Both of them were drinking beer and sharing the news. Harvey was finishing up a new computer program that he had not yet tested enough. This time he was drawn to medicine. The finished product was to be of interest to pharmaceutical companies for identification of medicines. The man had already been working on this project for several months, following a tip from a virtual colleague from Germany. The latter took on another part of the turnover of drugs and therapeutic agents, promising Harvey that together they would sell their brainchild to interested people in the West for good money. Tony did not see such bright prospects from the overhaul of one old hotel in New York. The resort complex was too visibly outdated, but it had that classic thoroughness that has become more and more in vogue lately. The customer wanted to get something in the style of romantic Baroque, with all these domes, colonnade, plenty of details, bright colors of the facade. Tony at first grabbed his head, but then suddenly realized that he and his guys themselves had a lot of fun to work with such a task. So in the professional sphere, both brothers were not bored. In the afternoon, Tony and his new partner customer signed a contract for a tidy sum. Harvey, too, seemed to see the light at the end of the tunnel. "Hey bro, why don't we go on a couple of vacations later? The sea and its delights are just around the corner, but I'd like to see some oceans overseas. Maldives is a bit expensive, but Thailand or Vietnam with their tropical paradise is the best." Tony's already drunk. "Aha! We will book a separate bungalow so that right on the shore with aquamarine and warm water yellow, velvet sand sea creatures to dive." They would have continued dreaming, but then there was a call on Harvey's cell phone from a German comrade. It turned out that he also spent the whole day at the negotiations, where he announced not only his program and his partner's developments. An excited Kurt shouted into the receiver, "Please hurry up." He spoke even louder. "I've been texting you and you're not answering." Harvey rushed to his computer, and there were indeed 3 messages from Kurt with attachments in his email. He'd have to sit up at night to sort through them all in detail. He went into Tony's kitchen and explained the situation. "It's all right," his brother said. "I'll stay the night. I'm gonna put my headphones on. I'll watch a movie or something and have another beer." When Harvey was immersed in his favorite world of programming, he stopped noticing anything around him. In the morning, he saw that his brother so diligently absorbed beer that all soiled in it and in the fish, like a piglet, smiling at the underdog who did not even move through things into the washing machine to tidy up. Tony put a clean set of clothes on the chair next to the couch. It took 3 hours for the sleeping guest to get into the awake phase. Made himself some coffee, washed the dishes. After their drinking, he carefully covered Harvey, lying on the air mattress with a warm plaid, and was gone. Work would not wait. The chain of coincidences began to gain momentum and acquire new links. In the evening of the next day, Harvey found that to the remnants of tasty gifts brought yesterday by Tony, catastrophically lacking bread, fish without cereals, and potatoes he did not recognize. It was not desirable to search long for outer garments for himself, so he pulled Tony's light windbreaker from the rope in the bathroom. It was not so warm and cozy outside in autumn as in summer. To his annoyance, there were no bakery products in the nearest grocery store. All dismantled people hurrying home under the cozy barrel of the TV. "I will go to the neighboring microdistrict Vysoki. There they have recently opened a supermarket. I'll buy coffee and sweets at the same time," the man decided, and quickened his step. He had to walk for at least 20 minutes. In the vicinity of the new buildings, not all the infrastructure has not yet been set up at the entrance to the store. Notice the company of the local major, Shaggy Golden Boy, so nicknamed for his luxurious hair with an African accent, blonde hair, sticking unruly in all directions like springs. Next to him, grinning at his loyal friends, 2 big foreheads were whispering hotly in the ear of their kingpin. He took a step forward. "Tony, are you out of your mind? Don't you know that Katie's my girlfriend, that she and I are serious?" the shaggy man said, but his smile looked evil and his voice sounded mocking. Harvey had heard about Katie leaving the hangout with Tony a couple days before this evening. The man had told him about it yesterday. Like the fact that he didn't drag the girl against her will to drink. She was all over him and throwing inviting glances at him all the time. Tony never liked that type of girl. He wasn't going to drag her into bed. But already on the street, KT suddenly came out from the corner of the club and whispered pitifully, "Take me away from here, Tony. I hate that cocky face of his buddies. Why does the shaggy one think he owns me? I slept with him once, and now he won't let me go to a party without him blaming me." Tony had always had an easy-talking nature, and now he was relieved that Kathy didn't have any plans for him tonight. Putting his arm around the girl's waist, he walked her to his car. He was off work at the club and hadn't missed a drink. The girl lived far away, a satellite town in New York, but that didn't bother him. They chatted for a while on the way, and then Kathy dozed off. She'd only apologized for hitting on Tony to get the shaggy one to come off. At the house, she quickly slipped out of the car, a grateful peck on Tony's cheek. If Shaggy asks what's going on with you and me, please tell him we're together. You're a big name around here. Maybe that leftist asshole and his gang will finally leave me alone. Remembering Tony's story last night about Kathy's request, Harvey decided to play along with his brother. Forget about Katie. She's with me now. He replied, shaggy-haired, and disappeared through the store doors. Are you going to regret this, asshole? He was followed by the angry hissing of the curly-haired handsome man. Having bought all the necessary things, Tony decided to take a shortcut and walk to his house by the courtyards, past the already built houses and the construction sites that were working hard even in the dark. There weren't many streetlights around, but he was never afraid. He had already forgotten about the incident at the store. He was thinking in his head how to improve the project he and Kurt were working on. He didn't hear the footsteps behind him right away, so a slight suspicious rustle decided that the cats had become active by night, snooping through the bushes near the beautiful cities. I stopped to smell the almost bright pink flower. What happened next? He could no longer see. A shadow flickered behind him. He was hit in the head with something heavy. Losing consciousness, he felt a prick in his back, similar to the manipulations of a nurse giving inoculations. A split second later, he blacked out. He came to himself twice, but he couldn't figure out where he was or what had happened to him. He seemed to be dreaming, even pleasant dreams. He'd and Tony on the islands, in a lonely villa, just above the ocean. He'd seen something like that in a commercial about traveling to the other side of the world, where coconuts and palm trees grow and bounty bars are made. The vision was a bright red blur, flashed above him as it seemed to him, right on the wooden stretcher leading to his and Tony's cabin over the smooth sea. Then he vaguely felt himself being dragged gently somewhere. In an awkward downward position, belly down. More sharp pain, the gray eyes of some woman in a white robe. More pain. Another failure. He woke up to the fact that there was not a single calm cell left in his body. It hurt everywhere at once. For a second, he heard his brother's voice in the distance, or was he imagining it again? Harvey opened his eyelids with great difficulty. Where am I? The men looked exactly alike. One was the quick, smiling Tony, who was always hanging around her. The other was now in her room in the capable hands of Annabelle Harvey. The woman gave him a bandage, getting ready to leave for home. She had to leave for work in Houston early in the morning. Something incomprehensible, hitherto unknown, and therefore frightening, was going through the girl's mind. It can't be, because it can never be with me. She said to herself like a prayer, but she was irresistibly attracted physically to two male representatives at once. She had not known before that such an ordinary, natural feminine desire for carnal love at such a wrong, inappropriate moment. And her hands are shaking, and Tony kept his eyes on her, as if some currents from her were reaching his gut. Nonsense, absurd, more like a shock, a fog, an obsession. It doesn't have to be like this. It is. Shove your misunderstandings to the back of your mind. Haven't you had enough adventures with men in your life? These feelings are stronger than her. It's not inappropriate for her to bring up a Jack London novel. The Little Mistress of the Big House. His heroine, I think her name was Paula, couldn't choose between two men and said goodbye to life. And yes, you're losing your mind. My star is bringing Lucy back to reality again. None of them are even going to notice you. Take advantage of the circumstances offered. It'll be over, and they'll disappear from your life. You're a criminal. An ex-con with a stigma on your bio. They're both so cute. Why would they want a treasure like you? Like a somnambulist, the girl is escorted to the door. Annabelle half-heartedly listens to the fact that their doctor informs them that he won't be in until the day after tomorrow. They have a supermarket, open 24 hours a day. It's a long shift ahead. From the kitchen comes Tony's joyful exclamation, Lucy, look what I found. A cup with a spout from such dishes on the waters drink mineral water. I'll pour some broth in it and feed it to Harvey. Meanwhile, you fill the rest of the chicken broth with something. There's potatoes, verbosely. I'm hungry, so I'm exhausted. The girl obediently goes to the kitchen to cook soup. Thoughts of two men who suddenly appeared in her life briefly led her out of captivity. The soup, cooked hastily, turns out to be delicious and nourishing, and Tony sincerely thanks the skillful woman. Fed Tony falls into a restful sleep. I have to work in the morning again. What are your plans? Lucy, you can watch your brother while I'm gone. As soon as he wakes up, we'll eat right away. I know you don't have time for us. I've got my own problems. I have to register with the police with my parole. Discipline first, then I'll go to the store for supplies and wait for you here. They go to bed in a peculiar way. Tony gives the girl more trump seats on the chair, and he himself settles on the floor at her feet. In the darkness, Lucy can see that the man's eyes glitter in the rare flashes of car headlights, sometimes passing through the yard below the windows. Both are silent, thinking about their own things. If someone had told me that a red-haired witch with green eyes would persistently inhabit my head, I would have made that person laugh, thinks Tony in silence. He'd always had a disdain for pink snot twirling. In his opinion, some over-romanticized naturals have a love affair. And now, hello, while we were having dinner. Suddenly, he imagined Lucy making him soup. Not here, but in his apartment. There are little kids running around shouting, "Mommy, Daddy, we're going to the amusement park on Saturday." And he's Tony, the head of the household, and he says, "Whoever does their homework the best today will go on the swings and slides." That's what a happy, carefree family looks like. Only trouble from these women charm. Good men lose their heads. But this girl is totally different. No eye contact. Jeans, sweatshirt, and making her figure without a uniform. Took off only at night, when she lay down under the blanket and pulled it almost to her nose. He didn't listen very carefully to her story about the prison term. Remembered the main thing: stepfather molested, she accidentally nailed him. Inexperienced, naive, not spoiled she was. There's not much to be surprised about. Life is what kind of surprises and twists and fates like the present. It's not a pretty story with Katie. He will deal with this handsome curly-haired man separately, as well as with his friends. They'll be shocked they stabbed Harvey in a hurry to scare him, not him. Without the cops, he'll pull the wings off the majors. He's got one man in mind, who Tony's crew made the house look nice. He's got a beef with Shaggy, for hurting him too. Tony tried to think of anything he could think of, but it was no use. Lucy stood in front of him the moment she emerged from the bushes. What was happening to him? Has he fallen in love? Nonsense, he can't wait for them all to make his heart on the altar of feelings. He's got one. He's got feelings for Harvey and his parents. A woman has no place in it, but his nature is masculine and refused to resist. The miracle that happened didn't care who Lucy was, what was wrong with her, or how. It was his time to become half of something whole. A thing of which songs are sung, legends are written. Rolling around on the floor, almost sleepless. Rising easily, he went to brew coffee and a brand new turbo for himself, and the girl now hugging the pillow in the chair. No sleeping conditions whatsoever. She sleeps sweetly in herself. Woke the girl up soon. "Hey, Ginger Sonia, wake up. It's time to go to the police. I've boiled some eggs, made some butter sandwiches. Eat up and go." "Thanks, Tony. It's been a long time since anybody's met me for breakfast in this life. It's been years since I've been with a couple like that." At once from sleep all pink after a shower, Lucy enthusiastically ate the prepared breakfast. She thanked the knight for his service and went to the city. She came back quickly gloomy, explained her bewilderment about the house of residence registration. "I don't know who my mother strained, but I was discharged to nowhere when the house was sold. She herself got married again and left with her husband somewhere in the north. The trail goes on and on." "Forget it," Tony told her. "Everyone's D's boomerang back on them. And you, on the contrary, wish your parent good health and happiness. Let her go with God." Lucy took the shopping from the market into the kitchen. She disappeared behind the bathroom door, having previously pulled a warm terry robe off the hook in the closet. She felt chilly, asked Tony to put the kettle on or make coffee. For a long time she scrubbed her face under a stream of hot water. The filth of family betrayal was destroying, then appeared in the kitchen. The man put his arm around Lucy for support and comfort. She smelled of herbs, retained the remnants of fragrance, shampoo, or shower gel, but in his arms she did not immediately deceive like the other young ladies. Everything pulled like a string. "Get your hands off me or I won't vouch for myself." Tony immediately recovered with difficulty equalizing his breathing. And Annabelle was working her magic on him. His eyes darkened with desire. His hand was almost out of focus. He tried again, rushing forward to catch up with the girl. Hiding in his kitchen, she stood in the middle of the room with a knife in her hands. "Are you crazy? I'm not going to do anything against your will. I like you so much I'm losing control. Don't start wooing me from my dark demon bottom. I just checked in today. I'm about to start a new life. What have I done to you that you want to put me on the zone for relapse?" The man abruptly turned 180 degrees, grabbed a jacket from the coat rack in the hallway, slammed the door, ran off to work. Lucy burst into tears in the kitchen so as not to wake Harvey. Again the disappointment, again she was wrong about the man she had begun to sympathize with. No, he let her go right away. But again it was ugly, again it was vile. Something forever burned in her heart and soul about Tony. It's ridiculous for such a grown-up girl to play with a man's interest. Maybe, but she was again covered in an icy shell of mistrust, ready to hide in the shell of such a hard fruit as a coconut, not to be found, not to be forged into the light of day. She couldn't seem to do anything about it either. She'll be looking for a job in an all-female group. She'll go to the hotel for the season, clean and scrub as a cleaning lady. She'll go around town and ask people if any guest house owners will respond. The only person I know now is Annabelle. You can't rekindle old connections. You can't put them to good use. Tony's been going on and on all day. Fool. What a fool he is to scare away the only female creature I've ever felt real warm feelings for. Unexpected, quick, but he was sure it would be the only one in his destiny. At work, he answered inappropriately to his subordinates, bought the wrong building materials at the base. He had to make a return, explain himself to the sellers, argue, prove. I was afraid to go to Lucy's apartment in the evening, to look her in the eye. Intuitively felt that he had lost her once and for all, disgusted by such a trifle for him. How many skirts around him he had passed through without thinking, changing like gloves. And now he found himself in the position of a petitioner. Lucy met him, nonchalantly escorted him to Harvey, who for the first time in the last 2 days was sitting on the sofa instead of lying down. The girl made him a bowl of cottage cheese with sour cream and honey, and he was eating it with evident pleasure. He's on the mend. We are strong people. Tony thought to himself with satisfaction. We've got to get out of here. How does His Majesty Earl Harvey Sr. feel? When will the order to leave his palace be given? Harvey's answer was unexpectedly stubborn. We have already discussed the subject with Lucy. Tomorrow, Annabelle will come and examine me. We'll see about authorization. That's how I'm gonna move in. And you, Tony, you don't have to suffer sleeping on the floor anymore. The landlady's doing a fine job with me. Now that's a twist of the ear, Tony thought. Yeah, they're already working together behind my back, making friends with each other. And then he felt ashamed. He remembered how Harvey hadn't hesitated to call him by the name of Shaggy's company, how he'd accepted his version of events with Kathy without reservation, and how he never uttered a word of reproach to Tony. He could have reminded him of his penchant for constant promiscuity with the opposite sex. In his head, out of nowhere, came the words of a song, bound together by the same chain, bound together by one purpose. I have no one more kin, Tony besieged himself. And the rat of jealousy, I'm about to drive out of my heart. Lucy fiddled in the kitchen and did it with obvious pleasure, smelled pies, borscht, with dill badge homemade cutlets. Tony's mouth watered at such luxury. Soon we'll have dinner. Lucy peeked out of the kitchen. Imagine, guys, I miss so much the usual woman's business that I dropped by the market after the police picked up everything. And here I was practicing. What a blessing it is to have a house and voices in it. Lucy, what kind of a house is it? It's an illusion and the voices in it are alien. But it was so enchanting, she thought. Let it be so, let it be for a few days. But I have an ephemeral semblance of family. Ghostly, not real, artificially created by a stalemate, and still marvelous. She didn't respond to Tony anymore because there was no attraction. It came at a bad time and went away under the pressure of circumstances. She looked at Harvey like a mother. I wanted to feed him, take pity on him. Not created for love, for relationships, for a cell of society. So there was nothing to open your mouth and dream of. One tiny childish experiment on Tony's part was enough to realize I came into this world for something else. I'll never survive me or the pretender to my body. Tony admired the girl sadly. Harvey was surprised to realize that he hadn't remembered his programs for 2 days. His cell phone was lost somewhere in the bushes. He just realized that now. Kurt must have cut all the invisible wires. Tony and Lucy volunteered to look for Harvey's cell phone. They searched the grass for a long time, but they cut off the cheap device like a cow with their tongues. In general, all the search was useless, and Tony went to Harvey's apartment to bring his laptop and buy a new smartphone. A little tired, Harvey volunteered to do the dishes after dinner, but he didn't have the energy for it, so he was escorted back to the couch. The man lay down thinking. There was something in the air, some vibe in the apartment, but he could not identify what was really going on. Tony's tense. Lucy's all like the taut strings of a fragile violin. Feelings are budding between them. But then why does Harvey himself turn inside out at the thought? He began to go through beads of memories of the night he'd been attacked. The most vivid seemed to be the moment when he came to his senses for a moment and saw a red cloud with 2 green dots leaning toward his face. There seemed to be no such thing as red-headed angels, but it seemed to him now that he had met just him, the guardian of his life, not afraid to get involved in the consequences of other people's strife. And the fact that he is now lying in the apartment of this brave girl, on her sofa enjoying pies and cutlets, in her kitchen, eating tasty cottage cheese from her hands, this is a new miracle. Harvey's musings were interrupted by Tony returning from his computer. But Harvey reacted sluggishly to his iron friend. Without active interest, he wrote only that he was sick and would return to the program later, and immediately closed the lid of the laptop. A little caught in the hallway, brother quickly slipped away in the evening twilight. He and Lucy were alone in the apartment, and Harvey asked her quietly, "Tell me your story. All from the beginning in detail. I have heard only fragments to think and fantasize is not mine. I want to hear it all from you." Lucy looked at the man, and then she burst into tears. Quite serene in her childhood, her father's flight to the north to earn money, her mother's floundering in search of a hearty friend, and the appearance of her stepfather in their house, who managed to put the young pretty schoolgirl's vigilance to sleep with gifts and affectionate speeches. About Vegas and Chicago, about dreams of becoming an author of women's novels, about that dreadful day when she ran to share with her family the news of her college admission, the fight with her stepfather who was hiding his plans. About the colony at first, she wanted to narrate sparingly, but then she took out of her memory the stories and those novels that she invented for them, so that she didn't want to howl with longing. About her acquaintance with Annabelle the surgeon and her difficult fate, about the convoy and how she had almost made trouble again. Harvey was a magical listener. It began to seem to Lucy that her life was not the worst thing that could happen under this earthly sky. She spoke laughingly now of her mission to save a glorious young man in Denver, of the unique taste of smoked sausage on the train, and the sweetness of oatmeal cookies eaten with strong coffee. The man was shocked at her candor and trust in him, at her loneliness on this planet, at her boldness in pushing the girl into the bushes with him. In response to the strange sounds, he wanted to say something very nice, but the words froze on his lips. Then he just stroked her hand softly, gently, affectionately, and she didn't push it away. And she didn't pull her own hand, clasped in his fingers. They sat like that for almost an hour, holding hands. They talked until almost morning. They brewed coffee twice, but they did not want to interrupt the dialogue under any pretext. Lucy had the feeling that she had been to confession, at the kind monk relieved her soul, without shyness and without thinking how it all looked from the outside. Harvey was drowning in tenderness. This girl struck him to the heart of a criminal with a pure heart. The fragile flower had not broken in the crucible of adversity. He had a strange feeling for her. He wanted to become for her all at once an umbrella from the sun and rains, a canopy from rockfall, a wall from trouble, and yet a strong burning desire to take advantage of her beauty he did not feel, even smiled to himself. "A prince or a knight for your lady, Mr. Musketeer. This princess is attracted to all sorts of things you will not notice." He did not leave the feeling that fate had confronted him with a certain test from which he must come out with honor. Like some hero of the love affairs Lucy was so fond of, a knight without fear and reproach, I throw myself at the feet of the charming woman who demands nothing in return. The next day, as promised, Annabelle arrived. The examination of the patient pleased her immensely. That's what means a young organism, a couple of weeks, and you can sign up in the queue of applicants for the honorary position of astronaut. She approved Harvey's move to his own apartment without any hesitation. That same evening, Tony picked him up, and they left Lucy's place. The girl could enjoy her own freedom again, but she was sad. In order not to finally give up from despondency, she persistently searched for at least some workplace. A vacancy was found in the hotel that was built on the site of her parents' house. Isn't that a sign of good luck? The manager of the hotel complex calmly accepted the news that Lucy had served her time. She only asked a little bit who the girl had wiped off the face of the earth and why. She hummed understandingly. This strong-willed elderly Armenian woman had once served her term as a senior son. Her daughter went to the capital, and there her next scumbag frowned and threw her out on the street with a belly higher than her nose. Never asked her to marry him. Frederick, my son, found him under guard, shot him once. The sharp-eyed boy hit the heart on the first try. Of course he was tried. Sure, served 12 years in a maximum security penal colony on parole. Then he got out, for good behavior. A young mom survived. Soon married a widower with 2 children, lives happily. Only her brother, the protector, was long saddened. Lucy began to work with enthusiasm and responsibility. She came home late, but now she could afford the rent of the apartment, with which there was so much to do without stress. A couple of times she had been spotted outside her house by Tony, asking her to go to a restaurant for dinner or asking her to visit. She wouldn't go and she wouldn't let him in the house. Though she saw the man realized everything and would not pester again, I kept my heart quiet, for crying out loud. And Harvey, remembered with warmth, was grateful to him for that night of revelations. From Tony, learned that his brother, all tip-top with health, all immersed in the completion of the project, going to Germany for the presentation of his program. Went to see Annabelle in Houston on the weekends. Sometimes she'd visit her in New York. We'd sit around, reminisce, eat cake. They had just opened a divine, delicious dessert coffee shop in New York. The women nicknamed it Sweet Brain Blast. It was impossible to resist. Life got better, life got more fun. Just the words of the heroine of fate from the movie Chicago, doesn't believe in tears. For some reason, they kept running through my head. Don't tell anyone that when you achieve everything in life, you want to forget the wolf even more. Tony had fundamentally changed his principles, his traditions, his rituals, his ways. Harvey's abusers were punished severely. Dad was forced to send his son abroad to study. That way he'd be smart enough to learn. The beating up of his buddies, they're being subtly criminalized. They've been on the edge of the knife all the time. They'll be serving time for a long time. They'll have time to think about everything. Baroque mansions. Tony and his crew made them for his client so that the whole neighborhood went to them like museums. A package of contracts for the future. Almost all of them couldn't fit in the puffy folders anymore. The money was flowing rightly into nightclubs and parties. As cut off, even to himself, the man did not want to admit that raved Lucy lived thoughts and dreams about her. She was as adamant as a rock. Moreover, he saw, as soon as he held out his hand to her with a bouquet of flowers, she, driving prickly, turned. She didn't want to show it to him. But her eyes were frozen ice, her body tensing. Her gait was becoming like that of a statue. He couldn't hurt her again. She realized that unrequited his feelings with her own hands had ruined everything. Ruined it for himself. He still remembered the velvet skin of her body, the herbal plume of the scent of her hair, her confusion. The first moment and the icy anger. The second, it didn't work out. It didn't work out. Hopelessness and hopelessness. No one would believe that sometimes without her, loved, desired, so dear, he didn't want to go on living. Silent Harvey to his goal to wake up the sleeping beauty, to remove from her shackles of fear of the physical component of the relationship between a man and a woman moved slowly, not on the spur. He did not realize that he loved Lucy at once. His experience was not great in this part. He knew the other thing firmly. He didn't care how it would be for him in the future. The main thing was to bring Lucy back to a full life, with or without him. But she must become as happy as the female characters in her sentimental reading. Their joint brainchild with Kurt went through a presentation in Germany with flying colors. Both developers shone afterwards at the banquet like polished silver coins. Several contracts were signed for implementation of the common program in reputable pharmaceutical corporations. The next step was to offer development in the USA. He had a lot of work ahead of him. He'd only seen Lucy a couple of times. He didn't ask her out on a casual date. He gave her time to come to her senses after the zone, to breathe fully, to settle down, to stand on her own feet. Lucy now no longer worked as a cleaner in the hotel. She was preparing to become an animator, to lead in the evening's performances for the tourist public, to get the crowd in a half turn. It turned out marvelous. Language, imagination irrepressible. Even for the children's audience could come up with such contests and pranks. Adults swooned with delight and interest. In New York came into its rights exuberant spring, recovered from the winter chill yard, which played in the lives of 3 people not the least role. In the distance shone aquamarine highlights of the sea. The resort froze in anticipation of the new beach season. Many establishments were going to open their doors hospitably, and by the May vacation, they were rubbing their hands, shashliks, washing their stalls and cellars of resort goods to a shine. Harvey saw none of this. He was moving between New York and Munich and Chicago, explaining something to new colleagues and partners. He gave seminars and hummed around the computer as usual, arguing with Kurt, who had recently presented him with a new idea and new drafts of a new program. He hardly even saw Tony. It seemed to him that a slight chill ran between them, and still his brother remained for him the second wing of the most native and favorite person, his heir, blood, life friend. Harvey was not a naive boy, and he was well aware that his brother was also in love with Lucy. But talk about her and never, as if a taboo imposed on both on this topic, do not get involved, then nail the truth. Summer broke out. Resort village avalanches dumbfounded them from the enthusiasm of vacationers. Filled beaches became warm sea, not yet Nanavia to the shores of the nasty lump of rotting algae. In the markets, bursting stalls from local ripe strawberries, scarlet hearts and berries beckoned. Try us the sweetest ones. Lucy ate the juicy fruits and could not get enough of them. Yesterday Tony called her unexpectedly and told her that tomorrow night they would come to visit her with Harvey. A good excuse. She didn't know what to think anymore. Tony promised a tempting surprise, asked to prepare his wonderful borscht red, pies, cutlets with fried potatoes are also welcome. The redhead himself snapped back at Lucy, but she smiled to herself. There was something so promising in Tony's voice that she was already burning with curiosity. At exactly 8:00 p.m. the doorbell rang, and the brothers piled into the apartment at the same time. Sort out the groceries in the bags, Tony cheerfully commanded the girl. We have today a house party in honor of our common success. The table was set quickly. Lucy was not lazy. Huge pan with cutlets, ruddy potatoes, a dish of pies with meat, onions and eggs, cabbage, vegetable salad on the stove under steamy aromatic borscht. Tony quickly put on plates, brought with him delicacies. He stuffed a cake in the freezer, put a small bucket of strawberries on the shelf, opened the champagne and made a speech. Guys, I've been thinking about it for a while, and I've decided to give you a gift for two. Don't be so quick to object. I've got it all figured out. Lucy can use it too. She's been on her best behavior all these months. She's earned a great reputation with the management at the hotel. I've already gone there to get her references. Harvey and Lucy stared at him in total bewilderment until they didn't understand the thing. When did we meet, you dummies? Last October, they both answered at the same time. Well, my friends, since that day, we've each taken a different course in life. If you have noticed it, of course, all of us have achieved notable success in the business field, managed to increase our capitals, even if they are not the same size. Tony smiled. I've just bought you the island of Fukuoka in Vietnam. I picked out a fun hotel in the colonial French style. The grounds are all tropical flora, pools, beaches and villas. You'll fall right into the sea. Lucy and Harvey were quiet for a while, and then they started talking. What on earth have you got in your head? What's Tony's fantasy, if it's just the three of us? You see, my precious ones, I'm contractually obligated in October. And you, Harvey, you're taking a break. I've done my research, and Lucy has just finished her first season at the hotel, and you're on your way. Harvey, confused, was silent. He realized that just as he was in love with Lucy, his brother, knowing, or rather feeling Harvey's inner aspirations, was giving him a fabulous chance to deal with his love for Lucy. Lucy was half silent. She was scared. She really wanted to try to create a relationship with a decent man. Harvey was very handsome to her, but she thought he was out of place, out of her league. Ruffled Tony tried with his stories about paradisiacal Vietnamese bushes, stunning sun mysteries in those lands, divinely cooked seafood, to break the wall of their distrust to this adventure. He would give anything in the world to fly to Fukuoka together with Lucy. But his train had left. He knew it firmly, fired by the news Harvey and Lucy had finally agreed to try and make the journey. There was still plenty of time ahead of them before the trip, enough to settle all the business matters and prepare thoroughly. The cork from the champagne bottle flew out with a clinking rattle that condemned the passions at the table a bit. It brought everyone back to sinful ground. Lucy's cooking and the goodies brought by the guys were destroyed with rapture. Everyone was a little embarrassed, but tried to hide it from the others. When the men left Lucy late at night, both brothers kissed her goodbye on the cheek. She didn't pull away, didn't freak out, and even hugged them both lightly in return. One had to get rid of one's nightmares at some point, no matter how scary they were. In the backyard of the house by that bush, Tony and Harvey slowed their steps. "You're the one who loves her. Tony, what are you doing? How are you gonna live with yourself? I don't want to live without you. You might not be able to forgive her if she chooses me." I tried to show her some affection, but I wasn't patient and she shut down for good. "Don't make the same mistake I did, buddy. As for you and me being halves of the same pole, it can't last forever. If you are careful and wise, she will now become your second wing." The two brothers walked away from Lucy's house in different directions. Captivated by their love for the same woman, they managed to remain people who knew how to set the right accents in life. At the apartment window, Lucy froze. What does tomorrow hold for her? Will she be able to overcome her fears and love Harvey if fate in the person of Tony decided to give her such a chance? Only time will answer these questions. She sincerely hopes that ahead of her, after all the misadventures, are still very, very much different, but so magical and promising.
Thank you for watching this video to the end. Subscribe to the channel. Like it, write comments if you like the story, and see you on the channel.